Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to a closer look at the A2D, the A2D-1 rather. This attacker at 6'7" in the American aircraft lineup at rank 4 seems a little bit high rank, or a little bit low rank I should say. High battle rating at 6'7". It's almost an early jet. In fact, it's powered by a couple of jet engines driving contra-rotating propellers. Sorry, stumbling over my words today. But we got a lot to talk about today, and really this is just a closer look at how it actually performs in combat. You're going to see me using some techniques that I've been developing here in the test flight, and I'll tell you about how I've been test flying and practicing with the A2D because that has been very helpful to me. We're going to talk a lot about how this performs and how it feels, what's worked for me in ground realistic battles, and I'll touch a little bit on Air RB, but with the hi baby, with the A2D spam right now, Air RB is a little bit crazy, so I have found a more balanced and manageable experience in ground battles, and flying CAS and anti-CAS should be no surprise to people that have been watching the channel. And already you can see some fancy footwork by the A2D. I've been changing up the way that I bomb because of some changes to the way bombs work that I've talked about again in recent videos. With update 1.89, it's much more dangerous to have a short fuse on your bombs, and having a long fuse is much less practical, especially considering that the majority of the bombs you'll be carrying on your A2D will be what in the game is considered small bombs, just large enough to deal with tanks at your battle rating with a near hit or a direct hit. And that means if you have 2 or 3 seconds for the enemy to drive away, he's going to be able to avoid destruction, and that's not something, after all of your hard work of lining up your attack, you want to happen. You want those tasty direct hits. We're actually using an assault fuse in this match. Hey, inside voices. She has no concept of inside voices, sorry about that. But the tank baby, she's set to full-on aggressive mode. And again, I apologize. Probably not for the first nor last time. If you're looking for a professional style video, you must be new here. I'm sorry. I'm always going to be an amateur. I'm always going to have little kids in the background because these are my girls, and these girls are my full-time job. So using a bit of rudder here, you will find yourself manually implementing the rudder quite often in A2D, especially in your vertical maneuvering. And also, you're not going to put a fire out, so you might as well go for a Japanese recovery. Another thing that I haven't mentioned about A2D that you saw very early on in the video is the American 6'7" ground lineup is so fun. And yes, I love my golden name tags, but even in the regular tech tree, it's it's just chock full of powerful competitive meta vehicles that are also fun to play. And so getting into the A2D is a lot of fun. Sometimes I'll just find myself playing the ground vehicles instead of getting into my CAS, just because of how fun they are. And you can see us chasing down an ME-262 in a ground battle, proving that if you play your cards right, there is little at your own battle rating that poses a real challenge. The Kika, actually, someone brought up in another video, is a much better competitor comes to air performance to the A2D, and they're absolutely right. And with that 800 kilogram bomb, it's also capable of doing ground attack missions and sets itself nicely as competition for the A2D, or maybe the A2D is the competition. And with the increased ground strike potential and more ammunition in the magazines for the A2D, you definitely see that these are two aircraft that are fun to pit against each other in the battlefield. Should I have made a Kika versus A2D video? Well, I guess there's still time. But those of you that have seen my channel know that I'm absolutely in love with the Kika, and I am qualified to say in this regard that the Kika is not going anywhere. It's still, yeah baby, you're so loud! It's still one of the best aircraft in the game, especially at a 6.7 BR. But the A2D, a sturdy platform, you're often able to fly back to base with significant amounts of damage to your airframe, but no aircraft in War Thunder is really all that tanky, with perhaps the exception of the IL-2. And so you can't rely on its ability to take damage when it comes to how you set up your strategies, but if you take 1 or 2 hits from even 20 mil high explosive, you might actually survive and make it back to base. When it comes to your landing, you have to use the landing gear. The bouncing bug is still in the game, so belly landing an aircraft is a suicide mission, as you will shortly see. Well, I should say, you'll see it at some point in this video. This is going to end up being something of a longer video, as we are going to cover pretty much my entire experience over the past day with the A2D. And again, apologies if this is not a professional or well-made video. It just comes down to my lack of time to make these things happen. So, in this match, as you see, we didn't have enough spawn points to spawn in A2D, so we spawned in an unequipped P-47M first sorry, I had to. Frickin' normies. And we are just absolutely shrekking these ground targets. We're harassing people at this point with our 50 cals, but we're keeping an eye on the enemy air spawn, and our allies were actually very useful in typing in a chat when an enemy plane spawns in. We had 3 people flying CAS and anti-CAS here. It's so nice to get into an American team that has some experienced ground attack pilots in it that do those helpful things like call out targets in the air. And you can see that once the P-47 gets on target, it's really hard. We're able to engage from very long range on that Russian fighter that under normal circumstances he would be very well equipped to deal with the P-47, but when there's only one-on-one and I have shots on him, I can just spray and pray until I light a fire. Speaking of, there's that SU whatever it is, open top tank destroyer. Always fun to see one of those when you're in a P-47, and I was just having so much fun getting enough score points to get into A2D that I even thought about, well, just staying in the skies and enjoying myself in the jug. And all of this is to say that the other fighters in the American tech tree that can fly CAS and anti-CAS, including the P-47 in all of its variants, are still very fun. They're still viable even in a 6.7, 7.7 battle, because the air combat in anything before 8.0 ground battles is really not necessarily reliant on the performance of your aircraft as much as your ability to make it work in the ways that it works. Having no markers and having people spawn into the match at different times really is a game changer, and I'm a huge fan. That's one of the reasons that I fly CAS all the time now. Here we are in our A2D, and this isn't going to be, Tesleet gameplay. This is just a log of the things that I've been experiencing and things that I hope you find useful. Sorry as I climb around here. This is, again, not professional stuff, but I literally don't have time to produce more polished content. Here you can see us just playing around with the low-speed maneuverability of this plane, which, as I mentioned before, is fantastic. Not the most nimble, but very reliable and consistent. The thing just doesn't want to stall, and it also is able to prop hang to an incredible degree. And now this match is wound down, and we get to the reward, which is much better than what you would expect out of my meager contribution. It seems like I was always playing second fiddle in that match, but that's something that's going to happen to you reasonably frequently on an American team, because there is so much competition among comrades for those kills and those power plays, but sticking around can be very rewarding in itself. We got a great reward both in RP and Silver Lions for that battle, just in case you're grinding. But I pretty much own everything I want to own in the game as far as regular tech tree vehicles. And, well, I've bought a lot. Oh my goodness! Let's talk about that approach. So at the last second, we decided to change targets. Yeah, thank you for making this pie for me, baby. At the last second, we decided to change targets to the Tiger 2H. We clipped the ground with our wing. We still hit with our bombs. Thank you very much. You don't have to worry too bad about 2,000 pounders. We actually had a bomb delay this time of I think around 2 or 3 seconds, so we survived that low altitude bombing. We're going to use a little bit different tactics sometimes. A Focke-Wulf sort of engaged but then didn't commit, tried to zoom away, which is definitely not the answer when it comes to the A2D, but there's really not anything a Focke-Wulf could do if he wasn't aware I was missing half of a wing. We make it back to the airfield, and remember how I told you that the bouncing bug is still in the game? Yeah, you'll see that. Also, we're going a little bit quick here, but I question this aircraft's ability. Look at the whole thing just fly apart to land on its belly. So you gotta put that gear down. If your gear is destroyed, you're done for. Also, another thing I noticed about the A2D, and one of the reasons we weren't using our flaps there, is that if your flaps are uneven, they will throw you around. The flaps are ridiculously strong pulling, which is something I find a bit odd about the A2D, but whatever. In fact, all the control surfaces seem to pull fairly hard, but well, maybe that makes sense in its own way. And here you can see a little breakdown of how we've been doing in the A2D. Again, I haven't spent a ton of time in matches in this, but I've spent probably 3 hours or so in test flight and solo custom battles, just getting a feel for how to drop the bombs in this new update, which again, I've mentioned, is a bit different. You need to keep your distance unless you have a much longer fuse, and setting a longer fuse means you have a much smaller chance to actually catch someone with your bombs in a PvP environment. So, we've been having a lot of fun with the A2D. It definitely has its idiosyncrasies. It is balanced at 6.7, and I would hesitate to put it any lower. It definitely has issues with facing AA, as you can see, especially since almost no armor is actually modeled in the aircraft, much less than you would expect out of a dedicated ground attacker. And here you see us taking on an R2Y2 in one of the few Air RB matches we played, and it's very capable of chasing down and executing early jets, especially the rather bulky R2Y2. He saw that we were catching him, so he decided to take a wide turn, and we were very capable of catching him with our dispersion shots. I mentioned that I've been spending a lot of time in solo custom battles, and that's exactly what you see here. It's a 100 tank battle in realistic with markers turned on just to make it easier for me to see my targets. Unlimited fuel, unlimited ammunition, plenty of chances for me to try out different things with regard to the armament, and this is where I actually tested what the best loadout is for the A2D, and the plethora of 250 pounders are fun to use but also very unreliable. It comes down to the same things that you have with the other bombs. You have to have a longer delay or engage from further distance, and the dispersion on your drops means that you're going to be rolling the dice when it comes to dropping your bombs. If you drop from a higher altitude, and again, if you don't, then you need that timer on there, which means that someone can respond to your bomb drops. So I've had the most success with using an assault fuse and attacking from longer distances, which means that it helps to use the bigger bombs with the 500 pounders and a couple of 2,000 pounders. For the 2,000s, you can afford to just drop and watch the fireworks, but with the 500s, you really have to get a feel for how they work, and also it really helps to drop them in sequence. So if I'm fairly confident I'll do a drop of 4 bombs at a time. If I'm not so confident, maybe I'll drop 6 or more at a time, or just go for a better approach angle. So knowing when to roll them, knowing when to fold them, knowing when to walk away and when to run is definitely helpful in the A2D. And just like a gambling man, you gotta count on the RNG sometimes with this update, on account of bombs just aren't quite as effective as they were. They're twice as effective at blowing yourself up as they were. So if you're going to be successful as a ground attacker, you need to mix up how you use your bombs with 1.89, and HVARs are still fairly useless. I'd love to see heat rockets added to the A2D, even if they add a heat HVAR. Is there such a thing? I don't know, but high explosive rockets are nigh unto useless for an attacker like the A2D, as they don't hit any harder than your cannons, and at that point you might as well just use the guns. Anyway guys, hope this was helpful to you. It was definitely fun for me to play in these matches, and I learned a lot. I'll go ahead and leave up some footage of me playing around here on the custom battle to show off the skills that I've been learning, and maybe I'll leave you guys with some music too. So here's some more A2D gameplay. This looks a lot like it would look in a regular match if you had the skies all to yourself. You can see my use of flaps here and moving in the vertical on account of the great energy retention of the A2D, its ability to produce power, and how it's much easier to aim your targets if you're attacking from above. And that's something you're going to have to do if you have an assault fuse especially. But once you master that, you can rock the world of the enemy with your high explosive bombs, and that really is the calling card of the A2D. You see, we have to give a fairly large amount of lead to our bombs, as they drop lower on our attack vector than you can expect out of the jets or the Kika. If you're used to using the F80A or the Kika in ground attack, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where the bombs pretty much fly just below your aiming reticle. This is not the case with A2D, and it could come down to the speeds that you end up engaging ground targets in, which are still lower than jet speeds for the most part. The smaller blast area of the lighter weight bombs, and also it could have a small amount to do just with the way that the bombs fly off the racks on A2D. It looks like they're almost inclined a bit, but well, I don't really have the qualifications to comment on that. All in all, spending time in a custom battle, spending time in a test flight, getting a feel for your aircraft always pays off, and the A2D is a prime example of that. Look at the way we pop the flaps in the top there, and then once we get to the peak of our loop, then we retract the flaps, because they kind of like to tear on the A2D, especially the takeoff flaps are really unforgiving, and with the amount of speed you're able to pick up, you need to quickly start retracting those flaps or they're going to tear, and that will cause some issues for you because they're very useful on this attacker. Anyway, there's a lot more I could say, but I'll just close with I hope you guys are enjoying your day. I hope you guys are having fun with 1.69 and 1.89, sorry. And I'm interested to hear what your experience has been and what you guys are going for. The best place, as always, to get a hold of me is on the Discord. And with that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
It's hand there. I
Yeah.
don't know what the other one is.
It's probably a yak.
Yeah, it could be.
Oh, is that a friendly? I just shot. Shit.
good. It's so unfortunate you only get to